Some families hide their sins behind church walls, but when the truth comes out, it comes out louder than any prayer. This is the story of betrayal, manipulation, and a mother who exposed everything they tried to bury. She never expected her life to collapse twice. The first time was when she discovered her husband had been cheating on her. The second was when he died in an accident, leaving behind secrets that shattered her home all over again. At 46, she had survived heartbreak, humiliation, and years of raising her two daughters alone. She believed his death would finally bring closure. Instead, it brought chaos. Her husband had fathered two infant boys with another woman, and the cruelest part? Her own daughters were the ones who found the cheating evidence first. They saw the messages. They saw the pictures. They were the ones who carried the pain long before anyone else knew. The accident should have ended the drama, but his parents, they refused to let the truth die. They circled her family like vultures, demanding custody of her daughters, trying to move into her house, twisting the past to protect their son's image. To them, their son was innocent. The affair partner was just a surrogate. And the daughters were ungrateful and rebellious for refusing to accept the secret babies. Their lies grew uglier by the day, but the day everything broke was her youngest daughter's birthday. It was supposed to be simple, a sweet day at the weekend market, fresh fruit, warm bread, chocolate, and a small budget to let her 15-year-old girl buy whatever made her happy. For an hour, everything was fine. Then the call came. Her daughter's voice was shaking. Mom, kuch ajib ortine muj corner kar rahi hain, please ajao. She ran, her eldest by her side. At the market, she found 6 older church women surrounding her crying daughter. Faces she recognized from her ex-in-law's church. They weren't speaking softly. They were shouting at a child. They accused her daughter of being unchristian, of being cruel for not visiting her paternal grandparents, for refusing to mother her orphan baby brothers. Her daughter stood shaking, holding her shopping bag like a shield. The mother stepped forward. She placed herself between those women and her daughter, but instead of backing away, the women turned their venom on her. They called her a bad Christian wife. They accused her of abandoning her duties. They blamed her for her husband's cheating. One even said she failed to give her husband sons. The mother had heard enough. Her patience snapped. Her voice cut through the market, louder than the vendors, louder than the crowd. People stopped and stared as she defended her daughters with every ounce of strength she had left. Security eventually asked them all to leave. But even then, the women followed her to the car. Whispering hatred behind her back, she got her daughters inside, locked the doors, and drove away. Her hands were shaking the entire time. That night, after her daughters fell asleep, she talked to a friend from the church. He apologized for what happened. Then he revealed something far worse. Her ex-mother-in-law had posted a long emotional story in the church's Facebook group. A story full of lies. She said they were left homeless and penniless. She claimed the affair partner wasn't a mistress, but a surrogate. She said the daughters refused to accept their baby brothers. She said the mother was cruel, jealous, and anti-Christian. And the worst lie of all, she said the boys were unwanted by their mother because they were boys. The comments were brutal. People believed every word. They called the girls disrespectful. They called the mother heartless. They said she should repent. They called her a failure. The mother read every line with tears burning in her eyes. But she wasn't a weak woman. She wasn't a silent woman. She had proof, and she was ready to use it. She gathered every piece of evidence. Photos of her ex-husband kissing the affair woman in their own living room. Screenshots of messages, texts from the affair partner, confessions. And the ugliest messages from her in-laws calling her daughters bastards. Messages blaming the girls for their father's death. Messages saying they caused the divorce. Messages sent just 2 days after the funeral. She took everything to a print shop, printed it in glossy, high-quality images, paid extra so every detail was crystal clear. Then she went home and assembled the binders. Soft pastel covers, clean, innocent-looking, designed to look exactly like the hymn books the church used every Sunday. The first page was the masterpiece, a full-sized photo of her ex-husband, passionately kissing his affair partner. On their couch under it, she wrote, "The true story of the orphan boy's parents." On Sunday morning, she walked into the church quietly. No one noticed her. She slipped the binders onto the back table where the hymn books were kept, identical in size, identical in color. Impossible to distinguish. Then she walked out. She never stayed for the explosion. She didn't need to. By noon, whispers started. By afternoon, the church Facebook group caught fire. By evening, the pastor himself had to moderate the comments because people were furious. Her phone filled with messages. Apologies. Support. Invitations to return to the church. Sympathy for her daughters. She replied to none of them. She didn't need validation. The truth had already done its job. Her daughters slept peacefully that night, and she finally breathed a little easier knowing she had burned every lie to the ground. Asterisk the night after the market incident felt heavier than usual, not because of fear, but because she finally understood how far her ex-in-laws were willing to go to destroy her daughter's peace. She sat in her quiet living room scrolling through the church's Facebook group, reading every lie written about her. Her ex-mother-in-law had turned herself into a victim. She wrote long dramatic paragraphs claiming she and her husband were abandoned, helpless, and left with nothing. She accused the mother of refusing to care for the so-called surrogate babies. She claimed the girls were disrespectful and brainwashed. She even hinted that the boys were unloved simply because they were boys. But the worst part wasn't the post, it was the comments. People believed every word. People she once knew, greeted politely at church gatherings, were now calling her names, shaming her daughters, and declaring her a fallen woman. They said she had no heart. They said she must repent. They said she destroyed her marriage. All while the truth was simple: her ex-husband had cheated. He had fathered two babies with another woman, and his parents had supported him despite knowing everything. The mother felt anger bubbling inside her, but she didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just sat silently and made a decision: if the church wanted a story, she would give them the whole truth, without filters, without sugarcoating, without shame. She still had all the evidence from the divorce process. She never wanted to use it. She hoped she could simply move on, but now the lies had gone too far. They were hurting her daughters. They were being dragged into a false narrative they never asked for. She opened her old email folder. There it was, every message, every screenshot, every confession, every conversation where her husband admitted to the affair, every text where he made excuses, every moment he blamed her for his own betrayal. Then came the messages from her in-laws, messages that once broke her, messages where they defended their son's cheating, messages where they blamed her daughters, messages calling the girls cruel, disrespectful, and even responsible for their father's accident. Messages they sent only 2 days after burying him. She remembered reading those messages with tears falling on the kitchen floor. Her daughters had found her there, holding her phone like it burned her hands. They hugged her, even though they were the ones who had been hurt the most. The memories fueled her decision. She transferred every file onto a USB drive. The next morning, she drove straight to a print shop. She placed the USB on the counter and said one simple line: "I want everything printed." The employee nodded and began printing. Pages after pages of glossy, high-quality photographs poured out. Images of her husband and the affair partner in intimate moments. Chats where he claimed he was unhappy. Chats where he lied. Chats where he planned weekends with the other woman. Chats where he promised her things he never even considered giving his family. Then the texts from his parents, words filled with manipulation. Words meant to make her doubt her own pain. Words that protected their son while destroying their granddaughters. She watched everything come out of the printer like it was justice being born on paper. The employee stacked the pages neatly and handed them to her. The pile was thick and heavy. Just like the truth, she didn't stop there. She bought clean pastel binders, soft colors that matched the church's hymn packets. She went home, made tea, and sat at the dining table assembling each binder with care. Not out of kindness, but out of precision, she organized the pages in a perfect timeline. Affair photos first, text messages next, confessions next, bullying from the in-laws after that. Every ugly truth laid out clearly, page by page. But the highlight was the first page. A full-page glossy photo of her ex-husband and his affair partner kissing in their living room. The kind of evidence no lie could hide behind. Under it, she wrote, "The true parents of the orphaned boys." She placed dividers, she made titles for each section, she made the binders look professional, clean, and harmless. By the time she finished, the sun had set. Her daughters came home from therapy looking tired but hopeful. They didn't know what she had spent the day doing. She didn't tell them. This was her battle to fight. Then came Sunday. She walked into the asterisk church with the binders in a simple reusable bag. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. She didn't smile, she didn't greet. She walked straight to the back table where volunteers placed him booklets every week, a spot everyone trusted. The binders looked almost identical to the prayer packets. She placed them gently among the hymn books. No one noticed, no one questioned. And then she walked out of the building, like nothing had happened, but the truth was sitting there, waiting inside those binders to explode. People started arriving, people picked up hymn books, and the moment someone opened one, the silence of the church shattered, phones came out, whispers spread, chairs turned, eyes widened. What is this? Is that him? He cheated. They lied. These messages, oh my God. By noon, the church gossip chain was fully awake. By afternoon, the Facebook group was in flames. By evening, the pastor had begged people to stop posting profanity. The in-laws' sob story was dead. The truth was louder than every lie they had ever told. Their reputation collapsed in one morning. Messages flooded the mother's phone. People apologized. People asked if her daughters were okay. People offered prayers. Some even asked her to come back to the church. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her daughters slept peacefully that night for the first time in months. Because their mother had quietly done what no one else had the courage to do. She told the truth. And she told it beautifully. After the church discovered the truth, the silence inside the ex-in-law's house became the loudest sound of all. For the first time in years, their lies had dried up, their masks had cracked. Their reputation built on fake holiness collapsed in front of the same community. They used to manipulate. Their phone rang non-stop, but not for sympathy. People wanted answers. People wanted explanations. People wanted to know why they lied so confidently, why they accused their granddaughters of cruelty, why they painted a cheating man as a saint. But instead of admitting anything, the ex-mother-in-law went to Facebook again. This time, her post was full of self-pity. She wrote that she felt betrayed by the community, that young people have no respect for elders, and that she had been wrongly accused. She never mentioned the photos, never mentioned the messages, never mentioned the years of bullying her granddaughters. Instead, she wrote a dramatic line: "No one cares for the elderly anymore. My great son would have taken care of us if he was alive." People saw right through it. Some mocked her. Some felt annoyed. Some simply unfollowed her. But one thing was clear: the church was done defending her. Meanwhile, in the mother's house, peace began returning in small, quiet ways. Her youngest daughter woke up without fear in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't scared to step outside. She made herself breakfast, smiled softly, and played music while brushing her hair. Her eldest daughter stopped double-checking the windows every night, stopped expecting someone to show up at the door. She finally slept without tossing and turning, small things that meant everything. The mother saw all of this with quiet relief. She didn't celebrate. She didn't boast. She simply breathed easier. She knew their problems weren't over. The custody battle still loomed ahead. Courtrooms, lawyers, documents, hearings, signatures, but at least the public humiliation had ended. At least her daughters weren't being accused of cruel things online. The next days passed slowly. And then something unexpected happened. Two apology letters arrived in their mailbox, one for her, one for her daughters. The letters were handwritten by two women from the church, who had previously commented badly about them online. They wrote that they were sorry for believing lies, sorry for judging her daughters, sorry for following rumors without thinking. They even wrote that the binders opened their eyes. The mother put the letters aside. She appreciated the apology, but she didn't trust easily anymore, not after what her daughters had gone through. Later in the afternoon, the church pastor sent a long email, a formal one. He apologized for the behavior of several members. He explained that the church did not tolerate spreading lies. He wrote that the mother was welcome to join the church again if she ever wished. But she had no interest in returning. That chapter of her life was already closed. Her daughters didn't deserve to relive any of it. They needed distance, fresh air and healing, not pity from the same people who once accused them. As the week went on, the mother spent more time with her daughters. They cooked dinner together, watched movies, played card games, even laughed occasionally. It was strange how peace felt unfamiliar, almost new, but they embraced it. Then one evening, her eldest daughter approached her with a question that made her stop walking. "Mom, do you think Dad ever realized what he did to us?" The mother stared at her daughter for a moment, a girl who had seen too much pain, too young. A girl who had carried secrets she should never have known. The mother exhaled and answered honestly, "I don't think he realized the damage. Some people only think about themselves. And your father, he made choices that hurt all of us." Her daughter nodded quietly. She didn't cry. She didn't get angry. She just accepted the truth. Healing sometimes comes in silent acceptance. The next morning, another envelope arrived. This time from a distant relative of the ex-husband, someone who now had custody of the two infant boys. The letter was simple, respectful, grateful. They wrote, "We heard what you and the girls have been through. We want you to know that the boys are safe with us. No one here is forcing your daughters to accept them. No one is blaming anyone for the past. If your daughters ever wish to connect with the boys, it will be on their terms, not ours." The mother read it twice. She hadn't expected kindness. It felt strange to receive it after months of cruelty. She showed the letter to her daughters. Her youngest simply nodded and handed it back. Her eldest said softly, "Maybe one day, but not now, not until we're ready." The mother hugged her. She didn't push them. Healing can't be rushed. Meanwhile, the ex-in-laws continued spiraling. Their reputation was shattered. Their friends avoided them. They stopped attending church, and for the first time, they were forced to live without control over anyone. They posted long rants online about being abandoned and unloved. But people had seen the truth. They understood the real story now. The mother didn't reply. She didn't check their profiles. She didn't care anymore. She had no space for their drama. Her only focus was her daughters. She wanted to build a world where they didn't flinch at the sound of a message, where they didn't fear judgment, where they didn't feel responsible for the mistakes of adults. One night, as she watched her daughters laugh together over a silly movie, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Strength. Not the strength that comes from winning a fight. The strength that comes from protecting your family. The strength that comes from choosing truth over silence. The strength that grows after surviving storms that try to drown you. She realized something important. She didn't expose the truth for revenge. She exposed it for freedom. Her daughters deserved that freedom, and she would protect it fiercely. Because no matter how many lies were told, and no matter how loudly others tried to rewrite their story, she knew the truth. Her daughters knew the truth, and now the whole church knew it too. The next morning began quietly. But something in the air felt different. It wasn't tension, and it wasn't fear. It was the strange calm that arrives after a long storm finally breaks apart. The mother woke up before her daughters and walked into the kitchen for the first time in months. The house felt peaceful. No buzzing phone with hateful messages. No anxiety creeping through the walls. No fear of someone showing up at the door. Just silence, and the soft sound of morning light slipping through the windows. She made tea, sat down, and allowed herself a few minutes to breathe real, deep breaths. The kind she hadn't taken in a long time. Her daughters woke up slowly, each one looking lighter than the day before. Her youngest smiled, something she hadn't done without forcing herself for weeks. Her eldest stretched and said, "Mom, I slept so well last night." The mother smiled back. Sometimes Victor. The day of the hearing arrived with a sky washed in calm gray. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see whether truth could beat a scripted lie. She dressed simply in clothes that said she was present and prepared but not seeking a show. Her daughters sat beside her in the waiting room, hands intertwined, quiet but steady. Her lawyer gave them a last reassuring smile and led them into the courtroom. The room smelled faintly of paper and polish. Rows of chairs held strangers who watched with dull curiosity. The judge sat at the bench like a mountain, steady and impassive. The ex-in-laws arrived with two attorneys and faces that tried to act calm but trembled on the edges. They sat like statues, pretending dignity while whispers circled the room. Everything about the scene felt surreal, like a play written by cruel people who expected applause. The hearing began. Procedures were called. Documents were entered into record. Her stack of evidence sat on the table like a small fortress: glossy photos, printed messages, therapy notes, teacher statements, witness testimonies, and the carefully organized timeline she had spent months preparing. Her lawyer spoke first with calm precision. He outlined the facts, the pattern of manipulation, the harassment toward the daughters, and the harmful behavior of the ex-in-laws. He read key messages into the record, those sickening texts that had blamed the girls for their father's death, messages that had shown clear support for the affair, and explicit bullying sent after the funeral. The judge listened, pen poised. Then the ex-in-law's attorney tried to muddy the water. He called it a family tragedy, a misunderstanding, something to be resolved with sensitivity. He argued that the grandparents wanted the best for the children. He spoke in soft tones about heritage and duty. But soft words couldn't erase what glossy photos had already shown. One by one, witnesses were called. A woman who had previously apologized on the mother's doorstep was called to testify. She told the court about the morning at the market, about how she had believed rumors without asking questions, how she had felt ashamed when she learned the truth from the binders, and how she regretted confronting a teenage girl. Her voice trembled, but she spoke honestly. Her testimony was a small beam of light. Then the pastor was called. He sat calmly and acknowledged that he had been wrong to let the discussion spiral on social media. Before investigating the facts, he said he would support any measures to protect the girls, and that the church would take internal steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. Her heart tightened when he spoke. It was strange to hear understanding come from the same pulpit that had once judged her. A psychologist from the girls' therapy center gave a powerful statement. She described the trauma the daughters had experienced, how finding out about their father's betrayal had affected their trust, their sleep, their school life, and how the public shaming had amplified their wounds. She explained clearly that pushing custody onto the grandparents would be detrimental to the girls' mental health. Evidence after evidence stacked up against the ex-in-law's claims. Each item was a piece of the puzzle that painted a picture their lawyers couldn't easily erase. When the ex-in-laws were finally asked to respond, their defense crumbled. They tried to deny knowledge of certain messages. They tried to claim misinterpretation. They appealed to tradition and the sanctity of family. But the printed words, the timestamps, and witnesses who remembered conversations exposed cracks in their denials. At one point, The judge leaned forward and asked a specific question about a message, where the ex-mother-in-law had written something cruel to days after the funeral. Her denial was weak. She said she couldn't remember the exact phrasing. The judge frowned by the end of the hearing. It was obvious which way the wind was blowing. The judge issued a temporary ruling: the girls would remain in their mother's custody, while the court reviewed the case more thoroughly. The ex-in-law's request for custody was denied for the time being. The judge emphasized the importance of the girls' emotional stability and ordered a professional assessment before any further custody decisions could be considered. It wasn't the final victory. They still had to wait for the full hearing and the final judgment. But it was enough for now, a legal shield and a breath of relief. Outside the courtroom, media vans waited with cameras and a few community members hovered nearby. But the mother wanted none of it. She wanted quiet for her daughters. She wanted to go home and cook a simple meal and let them laugh without scripts. The weeks following the hearing were not glamorous. They were filled with appointments, paperwork, and slow rebuilding. Therapy continued. The daughters' school counselors checked in more frequently. The lawyer filed additional documentation and experts prepared reports. Friendship came in small, practical ways. Neighbors brought over casseroles. A teacher sent a message saying the girls could take a few days off if they needed. A local women's group offered free counseling sessions. Meanwhile, the ex-in-laws retreated into isolation. They posted angry, defensive statements online and received more backlash than sympathy. People who once supported them distanced themselves when the facts became clear. Some relatives who had previously stayed silent now quietly backed away. One day, a package arrived for the mother. Inside was an envelope, a letter from a woman whose voice had not been heard before. She wrote that she had once been friends with the ex-in-laws and had kept quiet because she feared offending them. But she couldn't stay silent any longer. In her letter, she confessed that she had been asked to give false testimony years ago to help the in-laws' social position. She felt guilty. She could no longer carry the weight of that. The letter included a signed statement recanting that false claim and offering to testify if needed. The mother read it twice and then placed it carefully in a folder marked evidence. It felt like a full stop in a sentence that had been building for months. Months passed. Court dates came and went. The final hearing drew closer. On the morning of the final session, the mother felt the familiar knot of anxiety, but her daughters were steady. They had learned to breathe through fear. They had practiced in facing the world. The courtroom was quieter this time, like a room holding a secret that was finally about to be spoken aloud. The judge reviewed the files, the testimonies, the assessments, and the therapist's professional recommendations. When the judge spoke, his voice was firm. He found that the grandparents had acted in ways that were emotionally damaging to the children. He noted the pattern of manipulation and bullying, and he stated that placement with the mother best served the girls' mental and emotional welfare. He denied the grandparents' request for custody permanently. He also issued a protective order preventing the ex-in-laws from visiting the family uninvited, and ordered supervised contact if any contact was to be arranged in the future. Relief flooded through the mother like warm light. Her daughters clung to her after the verdict, faces wet with tears that were not only from fear but from overwhelming release. Outside the courthouse, some people applauded quietly. Some simply muttered that justice had been served. The media ran short, careful pieces that didn't sensationalize. Neighbors stopped to hug them. A few of the women who had once judged the daughters came forward and expressed shame. The legal battle was over, but the emotional work continued. In the months that followed, the mother worked carefully to rebuild normalcy. She enrolled the girls in activities they had once loved. The eldest returned to an art class she had abandoned months ago. The youngest joined a book club and found solace in other people's stories. Therapy shifted from crisis management to rebuilding identity and trust. They practiced boundaries, self-compassion, and the art of saying no without guilt. The mother took small steps to reclaim her life too. She began writing again, something she had always loved but had set aside for motherhood and survival. She met friends for coffee. She allowed herself to think about the future instead of only surviving the present. The ex-in-laws faded into a background of unanswered messages and blocked numbers. Sometimes she heard that they had moved away. Sometimes she saw a comment they had made online, desperate and lonely. But they no longer had power over her daughters' lives. One evening, as summer warmed the air, the mother walked with her daughters through a park. They laughed at nothing in particular, just the comfort of being together, without the shadow of accusations. The youngest picked a dandelion and let it go. Giggling as the seeds scattered in the wind, her eldest squeezed her hand and said, "Thank you, Mom, for not letting them win." She looked at them, two girls who had grown more brave than their years should have allowed, and felt something like awe. She felt the heavy weight of the past begin to lift. She didn't gloat. She didn't boast. She simply held them, feeling the present like a fragile, precious thing, and somewhere in the quiet moments, she allowed herself to imagine a future where fear visited rarely, and where truth had the final voice, because after everything, that was what mattered most, that her daughters could sleep without dread, speak without shame, and live without carrying other people's lies as their own. Live without carrying other people's lies as their own. Months had passed since the final court ruling, yet the echoes of that long battle still lingered softly in the corners of the mother's memory. Not as pain anymore, but as reminders of the strength she had found in herself. Life, for the first time in years, had finally begun to move forward without fear attached to every step. Her daughters changed too, slowly but beautifully. There were days when they still woke up feeling heavy. Days when old memories slipped back in like unwanted shadows. Days when they hesitated before answering certain questions, but they were healing. Their laughter came more freely, their eyes looked brighter, they returned to hobbies, friends, and small joys that once felt stolen from them. The house felt lighter, windows stayed open. Music played softly in the evenings, and for the first time, the mother allowed herself to think about a future without dread. She found a new job opportunity, one that wasn't tied to her ex-husband's old connections. She applied with a quiet confidence and was hired quickly. Her daughters celebrated with homemade cupcakes and candles, their small way of saying, "We're moving forward with you." Meanwhile, the ex-in-laws remained in the distant background, no longer a threat, no longer a storm, just faded voices that the world had stopped listening to. Sometimes she heard from distant relatives that the ex-in-laws had grown quieter, more withdrawn, rarely leaving the house. They no longer controlled narratives, they no longer held influence, they no longer had an audience. The truth had stripped them of everything they had used to manipulate others. One Sunday morning, many months after everything settled, the mother and her daughters visited a different local market, not the one where the confrontation had happened. This one was smaller, calmer, lined with plants, small handmade crafts, and stalls run by families. Her daughters walked freely this time, no fear, no glancing over their shoulders, no shrinking away from strangers. The mother watched them, letting herself feel proud. They had been through hell, and yet here they were smiling, picking out candles, trying samples of homemade fudge, arguing playfully over which bracelet looked better. The youngest turned to her mother, holding a bag of sweets. "Mom," she said with a small grin, "today feels normal." The mother felt her heart swell. Normal, a word she dreamed of for months. A word that tasted like victory. That afternoon, they returned home with bags filled with little things that made them happy. The mother placed the flowers they bought into a vase. Her eldest daughter set the new candles in the living room. Her youngest arranged her chocolates in a jar on the kitchen counter. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt earned. That evening, they sat together on the couch. A warm blanket covered all three of them. A movie played in the background, but none of them were really watching. Then her youngest asked, "Mom, can I ask something?" "Of course," she said. "What happened to the binders, the church ones?" The mother smiled softly. "They're gone now. People saw what they needed to see, and that's all that mattered." Her eldest nodded. "Do you ever regret doing it?" she asked. The mother shook her head gently. "No, because it wasn't revenge, it was truth, and truth protects us. Revenge only burns, truth frees." Her daughters leaned on her shoulders. They didn't say anything, but their silence was full of understanding. Later that night, when they were asleep, the mother stood near their bedroom doors, watching them breathe peacefully. Their faces were soft, calm, and untroubled. She whispered to herself, "We survived. We really survived." Weeks turned into months, and life continued to grow in small, beautiful ways. She got promoted at her new job. Her eldest daughter won an award at school for an art project. Her youngest wrote a poem in class about strength, and her teacher framed it in the hallway. Healing didn't come all at once. It arrived in layers, in steps, in moments that didn't look like healing at first. One night, as they sat around the dining table, her eldest daughter said something that stayed with the mother for a long time. "You know what I realized, Mom? Sometimes people break us, and sometimes people save us. But sometimes we save ourselves." The mother felt tears rise, not from sadness, but from pride. Her daughters had grown into young women who understood resilience better than most adults. They knew pain, yes, but they also knew courage. And she knew that no matter what came next, no matter what the future held, nothing could ever take away the truth they had fought for. One lazy Sunday afternoon, a soft breeze moved through the house. The mother sat on the balcony with a book while her daughters painted on canvas. Their laughter echoed through the rooms. The world outside carried on, unaware of the battles they had fought. But inside that home, peace had finally returned. No lies, no manipulation, no guilt, no control, just truth, healing, and quiet freedom. The mother looked at her daughters, two survivors who had grown stronger than their past. And she felt a warmth that filled every corner of her chest. The storm had passed. The wounds had begun to close, and the future, at last, felt open. They didn't need to erase the past to heal. They only needed to reclaim their story. And they had done it, together.